time. Tell us about a time of where you had to experience an emotional hurt to where you felt that you couldn't overcome, but God allowed you to make it through that moment.
For me, it was the year of 1999. I lost my sister in January. I lost my mother in December. And then I lost my aunt in December. All of those people were pillars in my life. Those were the people who I believe made me who I was. And because I was not saved, they were the people who I felt kept me anchored. They gave me definition of who I thought I was. I was always strong. I was always resilient. I think I've just always been that way. But the year of 1999 took me for a tailspin. My mother came to live with me because her sister, both of them were widows, and her sister had to be put into hospice care. My mother came to live with me. We were preparing to buy a home. We were preparing to buy a car. And we just had all of these plans of how we would travel the world. When my mother arrived, I realized something was wrong. I realized that she was just not the same. She was up before me normally every morning and dressed and ready for conversation, but not this trip. 6 weeks later, my mother died. She was diagnosed with cancer, and she had to explain to me that there was nothing that they could do. Those words completely broke me. For the woman that I thought I was becoming, for the strength that I thought that I had, I realized that I was nothing. I realized that I didn't belong to anyone anymore. And for me, the correlation between mother and child is extremely important. My mother wasn't perfect, but neither am I. But I belong to her, and that's something that always was precious to me. So in losing her within 6 weeks was just devastating. There was no time to prepare. There was no time to make things right or to figure out things and I wasn't saved. So the confusion of where I would land had left me empty. It made me angry. It left me broken. And shortly after that, my aunt died. And she also was almost like a grandmother to me. And for me, although I prayed and although I said I believed in God, my connection was broken. But because I wasn't saved, I couldn't see that. So I became angry. I became very distant from people. I was able to build a brick wall between me and you in seconds because it was easy for me to protect myself. Shortly after my mom died, my fiance and I at that time moved here to Jacksonville. And shortly after being here, I got saved. And it wasn't until I sat in Philippian Community Church that I realized that I belong to somebody else. It wasn't until I realized that the words inside of that book, with those 66 books, could come alive for me too. It wasn't the people that I was surrounded with. It wasn't the hugs that I received on Sunday morning. It was the word. It was the word that kept me. Because when I came here, I was broken. When I came here, I was lost. I was hurt. And there were so many loving arms and so many wonderful people that I became friends with and became a normal part of my life, but I still was empty. My first women's conference there at Philippian, I sat by Pam Hodges, and she gave me a piece of paper that I still have, and it says Psalms 138:8 on it. And the Lord will perfect that which concerns me. So I realized after that day of reading just that simple scripture, because I'm a real simple kind of person, that he is in control and I belong to him. I realize in Galatians it states that we are children of God. So if we're children of God, then I'm a daughter of the King. So I belong to him. And I wasn't lost. It took me a while to understand that, but Sunday after Sunday, message after message, Bible study after Bible study, the words of the Bible became life to me. And they breathed life back into me. Because no matter how pretty I looked on Sunday, no matter how many smiles I gave, I was broken. And God blessed me with just a blanket of words and comfort through just his words. I remember sitting in Bible study and I would read something and I would just look over at somebody like, these words are alive. I'm breathing. I'm living because of these words. Because if it wasn't for Jesus Christ giving his life for me, I don't know where I'd be. And when you think you're strong, when you think you have it all together, when something shakes your world, when something tears away all that you thought you were, you're left just lost. But when you realize who you belong to, you can walk in purpose. You find purpose. You realize that you don't have to belong to a clique. You don't have to sit with those people. You don't have to go to those places because you're okay, because he created you. And he created me with a purpose. So losing the grief that I felt, the hurt that I felt, at one point really had me bound until I began to walk with God. The thing about grief is that it's a passageway to something. It's not something that you're supposed to stay in. You're supposed to keep yourself moving through it. And the only way you can do that is by extending your heart and extending your mind and opening yourself to God. And that's the only way. That's the only reason why I'm here. So I've found through being saved and through learning more about God and just surrendering myself, all who I thought I was, to him, every broken piece, every tear, every question, I had to give it all to him. Because as women, we often can take little pieces and we hide them away because it makes us look good. You know, she did that. You know, she's doing good with that. But if you're really not doing good, you're just killing yourself on the inside. Since I've moved here to Jacksonville, I've been faced with so many people who I was close with that I'm not going to invade your life, but I'll call you with a word or I'll text you and I'll just tell you one day at a time. And it's not something that I'm thinking about. It's something that I know, because my mom died and my sister died and my aunt died in 99, and it's still one day at a time. One day at a time.
So it's like, what would you say to that person that is holding maybe that grudge or disdain against God, to say, well, God, you took my loved one away? Or what would you say to them if they are in that place of where they are full of regret?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say that he's the same God today that he was yesterday. And he never promised us that it's going to be easy. He never told us that every day you wake up, it's just going to be bouncing and with roses and smiles and laughter. It sounds good, but it doesn't happen.
Right.
You have to totally surrender your heart to God. I don't mean the pieces that you want him to have. I mean totally surrender your heart to God. You're going to be hurt. You're going to wish that you could have done things differently, because we're human. You know, there are going to be things that you could have thought of. I mean, I turned my house into a hospice care room. Single woman, my own apartment. I moved everything out of the way and I made it a hospice room. I bathed her. I did her hair. I did all of those things. And I didn't do it because I had a checklist. I did it because I felt I was called to do it. She had given up her life for me, and then I was going to do the same. So there's nothing we can do to rewind time. There's nothing we can do to take the power away that he himself holds. Because as we know, he holds life and death in his hands.
That's right.
You know, there's nothing that we can do about that. So my suggestion and what I've done throughout my life is to understand that he will perfect that which concerns me. And he is a healer on levels that you cannot imagine. You can't wait for the phone calls, because when you're going through it, you get the phone calls, you get flowers, you might get a meal, you get all those things, but then they stop. And you wonder, how am I going to make it from here? And the way that you make it from point A to B and then to C to D is that you just keep going. Push towards the mark. Understand that there is something at the end, because he knows the beginning and the end. So if he has put you in this position, then he's going to take care of you. He will never forsake us. He will never leave us. But you've got to believe that. And there's nothing that you can do to change what happened yesterday. But what you have the ability to do is change today.